Acetylcholine is an excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitter found in the central and peripheral nervous system. It is one of the most abundant neurotransmitters in the human body. It triggers muscle contraction, stimulates hormones, and controls the heartbeat. It is also vital for brain function, learning, and memory. It is the primary neurotransmitter associated with motor neurons, and it is the chief neurotransmitter of the parasympathetic nervous system. So the neurotransmitter acetylcholine is excitatory at the neuromuscular junction and skeletal muscle. So when the action potential reaches the presynaptic cell, it causes the calcium channels that are closed to open up and let calcium into the presynaptic cell. This causes the vesicles containing acetylcholine to fuse with the membrane, dumping the acetylcholine into the synapse. On the postsynaptic cell, there are these receptors called ligand-gated channels, specifically called nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. And when this neurotransmitter binds with these receptors, sodium channels are open, and if enough sodium is let in, then the postsynaptic cell reaches its threshold, and that is when the impulse travels in through that cell. And that's when a muscle contraction happens. However, for a heartbeat, the same happens, but instead of binding to this type of receptor, it binds to a different kind called a metabotropic receptor, specifically called a muscarinic acetylcholine receptor. So if it binds to this one. So these receptors are not ion channels, so when the neurotransmitter binds to the receptor, it triggers a signaling pathway which indirectly opens or closes the channels. So signaling through these receptors depends on the activation of several molecules in the postsynaptic cell, also involving a second messenger pathway. So because there are so many more steps, when the acetylcholine binds to these receptors, it takes a longer time than when it binds to ligand-activated channels. But that is how a heartbeat happens. And so to replace the acetylcholine that went into the synapse, a second vesicle fuses with the membrane, and this is called an enzyme. And it breaks down the acetylcholine into its component parts, and when it's broken down, it fuses back into the membrane, into the presynaptic cell, and it goes and makes more vesicles. The ones that are on the receptors, they are destroyed, and then the channels are closed again. So these are the problems with imbalances in levels of acetylcholine. Low levels of acetylcholine are linked with memory and thinking issues. High levels of acetylcholine can cause too much muscle contractions. So different issues is Alzheimer's disease, myasthenia gravis, and Parkinson's disease. Alzheimer's disease damages cells that produce and use acetylcholine, which may cause memory loss and other cognitive problems. Myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune condition that causes muscle weakness. It causes the immune system to block or destroy acetylcholine receptors so the muscles can't contract. And Parkinson's disease is a neurodegenerative condition that causes involuntary movements, tremors, and difficulties when thinking and mood. People with this disease have a decrease in dopamine, which allows acetylcholine to take over.